Hey Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols, and I'm here to bring you a different kind of Nicholsworth. Today, in my second part of my interview with Vitaliy from SDG Rebinds, we talk about two very important aspects of a rebind. Number one is what type of text block is the best one to have rebound, and then number two is what are the best types of leather to use in your rebind. Check it out. In your experience, what is the best leather to rebind with? And what are the best choices for text blocks? Should they go ahead and invest in a premium text block, or are there some good non-premium text blocks out there that have everything that's needed for a rebind that will last with the cover? Because I've actually had one rebind. I used a very cheap text block, and the work was beautiful, but the first signature fell out. I had to glue it back in, and it was cattywampus after that. That's not the fault of the craftsman when they're sent a poor text block. So what are some of the best text blocks you've worked with, and what's some of the best leather that you've worked with?
Starting with text blocks, obviously try to go for a sewn binding. I do rebind glued bindings and I offer extra reinforcement, but a glued binding will just never have the same flexibility or usability as a sewn binding. The first place to start is to look for a text block with sewn binding. Then it just depends on what people want. Not everyone can afford to pay $200 for a Cambridge or a Skylar and then have it rebound on top of that. Although plenty of people do that because they want the most premium paper on the inside. Honestly, I've seen a lot of good text blocks come out recently just in a cheap True Tone version where maybe the paper isn't the best, but they're constructed well. They're easy to rebind. The two publishers that come to mind that I've had really great experience are Crossway and Holman. With their inexpensive versions, they're easy to rebind mainly because it's so easy to clean up the spine, to take off all the old reinforcement. With some of the premium Bibles, Cambridge or Skylar, when I'm rebinding those, it's a little bit more challenging to take off the reinforcement because they just use better material. The other thing with Crossway and Holman that I've seen is their gild is fairly good. And that's a key point for adding art gild, kind of to make the Bible a bit more premium, is to add art gild where the original gild isn't affected too much.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've seen lately is like the KJV and the New King James Version Sovereign Collection and some of the NLTs or NIVs that I've seen, they have almost like a matte finish to the gild. It's not as shiny. And the problem with those is that when you add art gild to it, we add the dye to the page edges, it's hard to wipe off the excess. And so the original kind of matte finish gild absorbs that a little bit more and it discolors it much more than it should. But other than that, it's really up to the customer. What Bible do they want? What layout? When it comes to the actual text block, I would tell the customers just go do your research. Maybe look at Bible review pages. What do they tell about the quality of the paper, the quality of the binding? How flexible is it? A lot of places, maybe you can buy the text block and just review it yourself, see if it's what you like. And if you haven't used it, most of the time you can return it and get a full refund. There's really no like one specific thing that I can recommend for the text block, but sewn binding, good gild, and then a layout that you like.
With Tyndale blocks, I will caution the audience to be very careful which ones they pick. Some of them are well built, some of them are not. Generally, the way you can tell is to look at those first and last signatures and see if there's any space. And a signature is generally, is it 64 pages? Is that about what a signature is, I think?
It depends. I've seen some that are much smaller than that.
But a signature is pages, kind of like a magazine, a little magazine.
Yes.
Fold them in. And it seems the weak point in a lot of them is the first and last section, the first and last signature. A lot of them are now offering overcast stitching, which is an extra layer of stitching on that first and last. If you see that, then generally you're pretty good to go. But I have noticed on some of the lower end Bibles that the gilding it's got that matte finish. And also sometimes if you rub it with your hands, it just comes off on your fingers gold. And when you try to apply art gilding to that, it's going to rub that off and you're just going to end up with a mess. So that's another test to do, is just rub your fingers over that gilding. If it comes off, now, obviously, if you rub your fingers across it several times, some of it's going to come off. But if you just like barely touch it, and it just starts coming off and it doesn't stop, then there's something up with that, and it's not a good candidate for a rebind. So with your Tyndale blocks, make sure that you're taking a good look at them. With Thomas Nelson blocks, I would recommend making sure that it's either the premium edition, the Premier Collection, or it's the little brother to the premium edition that is the same text block, but it has just a leather soft cover on it. Those are generally really solid text blocks. Some of the lower end budget Bibles, so to speak, that are in the $30 and $40 range, those are the ones you really want to check out. I would just recommend spending, if you're going to spend $300 on a rebind, go ahead and get that better text block. You don't have to buy the Premier Collection, but almost every Premier Collection Bible with Zondervan and Thomas Nelson, they have a cheaper model that's going to cost you about $50, $60. And it's going to have a great text. If you're paying $20 for a text block, there's a reason. So unless you just love that thing and favorite Bible ever, then just let that thing fall apart and live with it. I'm with you. Crossway text blocks, those things are epic. Every single one of them. Heritage, it does seem to have a little weird inconsistency with the paper between the Old and the New Testament. I don't know what that is, but I have one Rebound. Absolutely beautiful, solid as a rock. So look for that overcast stitching. Like you said, look for those signatures. Check that first and last signature. If there's any little gap in there, just go ahead and either return that thing or just live with it as is, because that's what happened with mine. Is the first signature had a little tiny gap in it, and then the next thing you know, it was just falling out. So now with leathers, what are your favorite leathers?
I would say, generally speaking, I prefer working with cowhide over goatskin, just because of the consistency I'm able to get with the cowhide. It doesn't stretch as much as some of the other goatskin. So in the construction of the cover, when you're gluing it, it doesn't stretch as much. The goatskin does that. The cowhide doesn't do that as much. Also, I just like the stitching, the tool work, and the stamping happens on the cowhide. I'm a fan of bind stamping, and that just looks so clean on cowhide. So I've come to enjoy that. Some of my favorites is the Vitaliy Carlo waxy pull-up, just because you get just such a unique look every time. Every piece of leather is different just because of those imperfections, and it'll just patina and age with time. It will break in and become softer and more flexible. So really enjoy that. Some of the other underrated leather that I don't know why more people don't get it is the Minerva Smooth Cowhide. I've worked with Horween a little bit with double shot, and I would say that leather is one of the best like smooth cowhide options out there. It's more durable than Horween, has amazing colors, amazing feel to it. It's easy to work with and just looks amazing in my opinion. In terms of the goat skin, I've really come to like Capra granulosa, just a really nice, even grain. I would say it's like a more premium Sully goatskin. It has a fairly even grain pattern, kind of those pebbles, if you want to call it that. A little bit thicker, it's softer, it's a natural finish. It has great colors. It takes stamping and tooling really well. And I've enjoyed working with that one a lot. But really, there's a lot of other options. Sokoto traditional is kind of the premium goatskin version.
Sokoto, to me, it doesn't have good memory. The Capra granulosa has great memory.
Because I think Sokoto is a bit thicker. And so that's why. Also, there has been some inconsistencies in terms of the grain pattern, depending on what batch it is. With Capra granulosa, it's been fairly consistent throughout. And I've even had some pieces with some amazing deep grain pattern that I've really enjoyed using. I've really come to enjoy some of the newer ones that I've kind of experimented with, like the Fat Nat and the Pat Nat with the deeper grain pattern. The native goat skin is also amazing with some of the grain pattern. I mean, it's a joy to work with all of them. Some are just a bit more challenging than others. And so it's the cowhide versions that kind of, whenever I'm working with them, I know I can get that precise product that people are looking for more than with some of the goatskin options.
I love burgundy Horween. That is the only color Horween that I like. There's something about it that just draws me to it. But when we're talking about my favorite leather from a overarching scope, it is 100% the Vitaliy waxy pull-up. That stuff is epic. It has great memory. It takes stitching well. As you said, it takes tool work well. It takes blind stamping well, which has become my favorite form of stamping. I love the way it looks, especially when you get that little burned in look. So that stuff is amazing. But I am telling you, you mentioned Minerva. I've never seen that before. So that is one I'm going to have to try out. But I think the most underrated leather in existence is the Vitaliy Pueblo.
that stuff is just epic. It's really competing with the pull-up for me because of the way it stamps and the way it tools. As a matter of fact, I'm to a place now where I prefer the tool line on the edge versus the stitch line on the edge, just because it looks so great. It antiques beautifully. That stuff is just, it's good.
Yeah, with the Pueblo, what I would say is if you're not a fan of your Bible getting a patina and developing character, stay away from it. That leather will patina faster than any other leather out there. But if you like your Bible to look older and worn in, and if you use it regularly and you want it to develop character, then Pueblo will do that. It starts out with that kind of sandpaper finish because they do kind of scratch it up in some mysterious way, but eventually it will flatten out and buff out and become smoother.
I gotta test that because I've got a yellow one, and it started off kind of rough, and I was on the fence. But the more I handled it, and the more I used it, it even gets a little bit of a shine to it, like a little dull shine. It gets a really smooth finish. I'm generally not a fan of patina. Like the Tuscany leather from Skylar, I don't like the way that patinas. But this Pueblo, the way it patina, I love it. I have absolutely fallen for that leather. I love it. I'm actually about to have it done in another color just to see all the different colors. And that's the other thing about the Vitaliy cowhide is there's so many beautiful color options.
The choices are almost endless with what's available out there when you consider goat skin and the cowhide options that's available there. And we haven't even touched on any of the exotic leathers that are available that some other rebinders have used before.
Yeah, it's limitless. Depending on your budget and depending on your personal needs, it is limitless leather choices. That's why custom work is just so amazing. Yes, it's expensive, but I think that every Bible lover should have at least one custom Bible made in their life.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that segment. I thought it was very informative. Personally, of course, I love the Vitaliy waxy pull-up and the Pueblo, but there are all sorts of amazing Bible leathers that you can use. And of course, the text block, make sure it's a sewn binding. Also, look for that first and second signature to make sure there's no gap and that it's not falling apart. And then check for the overcast stitching. And ultimately, if it's a premium block, you know it's going to be solid. God bless you. Keep calm. Jesus on.